You're telling the truth, but nobody is believing you. Sounds familiar? What can you do? Welcome to Thank God It's a Story Saturday, a weekly video series where I share stories with you that you can use to make your messages connect. Today's story is from Made to Stick, and the story goes back to early 1980s when two medical researchers from Perth, Australia, Barry Marshall and Warren found out that stomach ulcers were caused due to a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. The conventional wisdom was that the stomach ulcers are caused due to excessive consumption of alcohol, eating spicy food, and stress. So, when these two researchers found out that it is caused by bacteria, they presented their findings to the medical community, and the medical community ignored them, did not rejoice it. Now, by the time it was 1984, Marshall's patients had run out, who was one of the researchers who'd found out that it is caused by bacteria. And what he did one day was to skip breakfast, told his colleague to meet him in the lab, and then he drank a glass full of close to 1 billion Helicobacter pylori bacteria. In a few days, he developed the early symptoms of ulcer, which is nausea, vomiting, and then asked his colleague to conduct an endoscopy on him, which confirmed that his stomach lining had become red and inflamed. He then used antibiotic to cure that and demonstrated to the world that stomach ulcer indeed is caused by a bacteria. Now, the question is, why did the medical community not believe them? The first thing was that the acid that is in the stomach is considered to be strong enough to dissolve a nail. So the medical community thought that how can a bacteria survive in the acid that is so strong within the stomach? The second thing was really the people who had made this discovery. At the time the discovery was made, Dr. Barry Marshall was an internist in the hospital, not even a fully trained doctor. So people said he's not somebody who will make a discovery like that. And Robin Warren was a pathologist in the hospital. They thought the discoveries of such nature only come from people who've done PhD and are credible researchers. Finally, the thing that they thought, which I found really fascinating, finding a medical researcher in Perth is like a physicist in Mississippi. Science is science, but thanks to basic human snobbery, we tend to think it will emerge from some places and not the others. In fact, in one of the medical conferences, when they presented their finding, the medical community snickered at them, and one of the doctors made a comment. They simply didn't have the demeanor of a scientist. Dr. Marshall just didn't have the demeanor of a scientist. So the question then is that do we all have to take such radical steps to prove what we are saying? In fact, no. Further down in the book, they say that what we've learned from various experiences is that telling stories using real people is the most compelling way to convince people. So if you try to prove a point to a community and you don't want to take a radical step like Dr. Marshall did, you have to be able to tell stories of real people, which is in line with what you are trying to prove. If you can't make people experience something, the next best thing you can do is to create an experience simulator. And stories are just that. Stay storied. I'll see you here next Saturday with another story.